All right. So, hello, good day. Welcome back to the season 2 of HealthJustice Talks, Usapang Kalusugan at Batas. Today's episode is very special because we have someone who's from a foreign institution, but at the same time has involved herself in studies regarding vapes and e-cigarettes here in the Philippines. This is very useful because it sets the standard or sets the information that could be a basis for stricter regulation on vapes and e-cigarettes, and at the same time support our long-time call for a total ban of e-cigarettes and vapes here in the Philippines. So let me introduce you to my special guest for this episode. We have for this episode Dr. Tuo-Yen Tseng, who is an assistant scientist at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, where she earned her PhD. At the Institute for Global Tobacco Control, she studies e-cigarette and tobacco marketing, youth perceptions, flavored tobacco products, and tobacco control policy compliance in countries including the Philippines, Vietnam, China, India, Mexico, and Brazil. So we are very, very fortunate to have for this episode Dr. Tuo-Yen Tseng. Good day, Dr. Chang.
Hello.
All right. So this episode, we're going to talk about youth access and online vape sales here in the Philippines, which is very important because, as you know, there's a proliferation of these products. I'll also speak in the vernacular because to our audience, makikita nyo everywhere, right? Kahit saan-saan nyo na nakikita yung vape, pwede nyo mabili online, pwede nyo mabili sa mga stores, and they're everywhere. And we have here a very interesting study that documents how our youth are accessing these products. And this is very important because it tells our lawmakers, our policymakers, how proliferated are these products in our societies. So yes, to start, Dr. Chang, to help set the stage for our audience, why is it important for public health researchers to understand young people's opinions or their perceptions and experiences related to vaping and tobacco products?
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you for having me. So here's something that should alarm every parent. So we now have scientific evidence that the nicotine and tobacco industry is using deeply concerning tactics specifically designed to hook the next generation. So why does listening to young people matter so much? That's because they are the ones seeing these tactics firsthand, and they can tell us exactly how it's working. The fact is, we're dealing with a calculated opponent. The nicotine and tobacco industry has strong financial motivation to target young people. When we listen to young kids, we can identify exactly what the industry's tactics are and how they're being deployed to impact their behaviors and the well-being of these young generation. And we know nicotine is highly addictive, and because the adolescent brain is still developing, youth are uniquely susceptible to a lifetime of addiction. And that's why early exposure is so dangerous and why prevention is so important. And hearing directly from children allows us to understand how taste-tempting flavors, flashy packagings, and sleek device designs are used to normalize these products. And these are not accidents. They are deliberate strategies to make these products feel like less like drug delivery devices and more like lifestyle accessories. And this understanding provides the evidence base for policy. When we can show policymakers exactly how kids are being enticed with specific quotes, specific product features, specific marketing channels, we can advocate for targeted regulatory interventions. And this helps us ensure that public health measures reflect the reality of how kids are being targeted. So in short, words from youth show us how the industry is trying to addict them and give us the roadmap we need to stop it.
Mhm. So this is a very important study because it's a localized study on youth access on vapes, whether online or in other medium. Can you give us a background on how was this study conducted, and maybe initially introduce us to the key findings of the study?
Yeah, sure. So I'll be talking mainly about a focus group studies where we conducted in three metropolitan areas, including urban and rural residents, like youth as our focus group participants. We talked to young kids, both those who use or did not use e-cigarettes, to understand their perceptions, their experiences, and their understandings about e-cigarettes. I'll also be talking about a few other studies we've conducted at the Institute for Global Tobacco Control on marketing of e-cigarettes, both in terms of online marketing on brand websites and social medias, and also in physical retailers. So in terms of the findings, so first and most striking is the dominant role of social media in promoting vape culture to Filipino youth. Our study participants described this type of content as constant and unavoidable. They told us things like the vloggers, almost all of them seem to be endorsing when they vape. And this isn't passive exposure, it's aggressive promotion woven into the entertainment content they consume daily. And second, we identify vape tricks as a particularly powerful hook for youth curiosity and imitation. And these are tricks such as forming hearts or circles with smoke that are performed online and even on mainstream talent shows. Youth specifically told us this drove their desire to imitate. One participant said to us, I saw it at Philippines Got Talent, vaping with a thick smoke, so I imitated that too. And another person said, people vaping on TikTok, they do tricks, make circles. That made me curious, and that's why I bought one. So these tricks function as both entertainment and tutorial, turning vaping into a performative skill. And third, what we saw was that peer networks emerged as the primary introduction pathway. Friends offer devices from vaping as something that makes you look cool and creates social pressure to participate. As one youth told us, I was able to use vape when I would go with my friends. They gave me vape, they said it's tasty and it makes you look cool. And finally, we're seeing widespread normalization through popular culture. Famous vloggers and content creators function as brand ambassadors and on platforms like TikTok and Facebook, making vaping feel like as a hobby or skill rather than a health risk. So the bottom line is, yeah, sorry. So the bottom line is Filipino youth aren't seeking out vaping. They're surrounded by vape promotion every time they open their social feeds, delivered by the exact people they trust and want to emulate.
Yeah, I can fully relate. You mentioned about the Got Talent show. I also got to see that, and I was so alarmed when I saw it. Like it's really promoting it, and it's making it cool. And on the part of health justice, we also have reported all these efforts, no, by the industry. But I guess, not I guess, we haven't seen any action from the government, any concrete action from them. Anyway, based on your study, Dr. Tseng, how are Filipino kids accessing vapes and e-cigarettes right now?
That's a good question. So we mentioned that a little bit that first and most significant is peer sharing and introduction. So friends lend or give devices to one another, creating a social circulation system that operates outside of the retail. We heard things like, I was able to use vape when I would go with my friends. They gave me vape. And they said, just like this, have a try, and it gets my attention. And second, we found family and household access. Some youth borrow devices from siblings, cousins, or other relatives. This might be a little surprising, but it makes sense when you realize that vaping has been normalized in many households, where adults might even view it as a safer alternative to smoking. And in addition, youth told us they can use vapes in places where cigarettes are prohibited, like eateries or bakeries, because the devices are easier to hide. This means they manage to sustain their use throughout the day in spaces that are meant to be protected. And finally, we documented an economic substitution pattern. Youth shared that if they cannot afford the cost to replace a device when it breaks, or to refill the juice or e-cigarette liquid, they may return to smoking single cigarette sticks. They do this because those are cheaper and more immediately accessible. So we're seeing switching between product types depending on economics and availability. So the key point here is that youth access isn't happening through one door that we can lock. It's happening through peer networks, family members, and the sheer portability of the devices themselves.
Yeah, this is becoming a problem. You mentioned about normalization. This is really the problem of these products. Normalization within peers, within families, within their environments, in schools, everywhere you find them. If I may share, one of my walks in the National University here in the Philippines, I saw children as young as 7 to 9 years old were holding vape products which were discarded by adults. So they're using it as a secondary user from adults. And I asked them why are they using it because they said that it still has e-juices and they can still puff and they think that since adults are using it, we can use it. That's very, very problematic, especially for minors. As you said, minors are becoming have more access to these products. So that leads me to my next question. Why are minors, despite of the strict laws regarding their access, have more and more or easier access to these products?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you mentioned a really good point. There are laws around this, but we're also seeing insufficient enforcement. For example, the retail proximity restrictions. Retailers are frequently found within the 100-meter restricted zones around schools, even though this is not allowed under the current law. A study from our center, the Institute for Global Tobacco Control, examined over 6,000 retailers near 353 schools and found that 78% of schools had retailers selling these products within the restricted zone, making them physically available to students. Students can literally walk out of school and buy these products on their way home. And second, retailers are not displaying the required age restriction warnings. In that same study, only 4% of e-cigarette retailers had the required signage stating sales to minors are prohibited. That means 96% of retailers are not even displaying the most basic consumer protection warning. And if there's no sign, there's no reminder to the seller, and there's certainly no deterrent to the buyer. And third, online age gates are not working. In our online marketing research, most e-cigarette brand websites offered online sales. And although many of them requested users to enter birth year or date, none required further validation. Any teenager can simply enter a false birthday and proceed to purchase. It's an honor system that could easily be exploited. And similarly, around 1/3 of brand social media posts we analyzed contained no age restriction text whatsoever. And finally, we talked a little bit about normalization and family views. So some youth feel their parents are less concerned about vaping than smoking. A teenager told us, when they smoke cigarettes, their parents will beat them. If vape, I'll buy you that. This actually facilitates youth access rather than preventing it, right? So the bottom line is the regulation alone is not enough. Enforcement is really the key. And we also need parents to understand that no nicotine or tobacco products should be in the hands of children.
Yeah. That's a very important point regarding accessibility, because in one of the congressional hearings where we attended, the online networks, the online apps were there and they were present and they were saying that, yeah, we have age gating and we have verification. But ironically, when we tried it on our own during that same hearing, we can still access these products, and there are ways how you can go around this age gating and regulation that they're doing. So that's very problematic. And at the same time, we also hear youth as having been enticed through this marketing and through flavoring. So I think my next question would be on how our flavors and other forms of online marketing are enticing our youth, especially it's as if these products are really designed for them.
Yeah, yeah. Totally. That's a great question. And let me start with flavor, because this is absolutely the primary hook that drives curiosity and experimentation. Youth described to us um, uh, about these products using languages that sounds like they're talking about food or candy and not drug delivery devices. We heard things like, it's like you're chewing candy. It tasted good. It was like I was eating chocolate, like eating a snow bear candy. They also commented on the fragrance smell. For example, it smells good when you exhale it. It really smells like a mango. It's like you ate a mango, or it's like you're wearing perfume. So these are the exact words from the kids we talked to. And this sensory appeal completely masks the fact that they are inhaling chemicals and nicotine. And that's really scary. And they are also flavor names that create emotional associations. We're talking about names like Sunset Paradise or Garnet that don't even describe a taste, but they create a mood. Youth told us these names are enticing because they're unfamiliar and sound relaxing or even sexy. One kid told us the name Sunset Paradise seems enticing, like being on the beach. This is sophisticated marketing psychology being applied to hook young kids. And what's more is that the packaging and device design are equally calculated. Our research identified products featuring cartoon characters, for example, cartoons printed or etched onto e-cigarette devices, or e-cigarette holders shaped to resemble cartoon characters. And then there's the fashion accessory angle. Devices often come with lanyards so they can be worn as necklaces. This allows youth to integrate them into their personal style. One kid said to us, when you have a vape slung on, you're like a god. You look dashing with it. You can wear them as a necklace and plan your outfit around it. So the devices become fashion statements rather than health concerns, as they should be. And the visual appeal and status dimension is also important. The sleek, high-tech designs make vapes aspirational objects, really. The device design itself communicates status and sophistication. As one kid put it, when you vape, you look like a rich kid because vapes are expensive. So what's important to understand is that all these elements work together and the effects could add up. So the sweet flavors make the product seem harmless. The cartoon packaging makes it seem playful. Fashion accessories make it seem desirable. And together, these tactics transform drug delivery devices into consumer lifestyle products that youth actively want. And that is something that is extremely concerning. And that's why we're here talking about this.
Yeah. It's really very marketing oriented. The way you're relating to us, how these kids or these young members of our society perceive these products, largely about marketing, like switching lifestyle, creating something as aspirational in the use of these toxic and harmful products. That's why I also want to ask, how significant, or what's the significance of online selling and social media in creating this misconception or false perception of these products, because kids nowadays access these products through this medium.
Yes, yes. We all know kids are on social media all the time. And social media really creates a constant exposure to these products that's almost impossible to avoid. We heard this from, like, we heard these words directly from kids. Like one kid told us, on social media, you can no longer see anything that does not encourage younger people not to use vape. And second, brands are using sophisticated engagement strategies designed to create emotional connections. In our research, 70% of brand social media posts used emoticons to engage consumers. They also use memes, cartoons, and giveaway contests. And this content looks like entertainment and not advertising, making it far more effective. And then there's the influencer component. Famous vloggers, and content creators serve as brand ambassadors. They demonstrate tricks and incorporate vapes into lifestyle content. And these are aspirational figures that youth already follow and trust, and now modeling vaping behaviors. And in addition, social media doesn't just market products, it normalizes vaping as a lifestyle. So we keep talking about normalization. When youth see this content constantly, vaping becomes part of youth culture. It's positioned as a hobby to pursue and a skill to learn and to show off, something that makes you look cool and trendy. And this normalization is incredibly powerful because it shapes how an entire generation perceives these products. So the significance here is clear. Social media has become an unregulated space where the industry can target youth with marketing disguised as entertainment, building brand awareness, creating desire, and normalizing nicotine use, all beyond the reach of traditional advertising regulations.
Yeah. We talked about a while ago on age verification, age gating, and we want to limit youth access on these products. However, based on your study, youth can still access these products. My first question, how is is it really effective to have age verification in our social media and apps? And maybe in your studies, are there better ways, or are there improvements that we should do to do age verification or age gating and really police on the access of children to these products?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So as we mentioned earlier, online age verification that only requires users to enter birth year or date without further validation is very easy to bypass. And there are also problems with health warning labels. Graphic health warning labels are mandated, but they're not strictly enforced. So we're seeing packages with only text warnings, which youth often ignore. We heard this directly. We don't mind it. Most people don't have time to read. We open it immediately. And even when graphic images are used, regular users experience desensitization over time. So the psychological impact diminishes with repeated exposure. So now, based on our research and global evidence, we know we need several additional safeguards besides strengthening the enforcement of current regulations. So first is comprehensive flavor bans. As long as candy and fruit flavors exist, they will attract youth. There needs to be a full stop. And then second, plan and standardize packaging. Right now, packages function as mini billboards with bright colors, logos, and design elements. Plain packaging removes that marketing surface and makes health warnings more prominent and effective. And third, rotating graphic health warnings regularly. This maintains their impacts and prevent desensitization that we talked about. And fourth, stronger tobacco advertising, promotion, and sponsorship regulations. These must explicitly include online marketing and social media. So, because we're seeing gaps in current regulations that don't adequately address these digital spaces. And finally, making all public places smoke-free and vape-free. This denormalizes use and protects bystanders from exposure. So the bottom line is that current safeguards are failing. We need robust and consistent enforcement of existing regulations and comprehensive policies that reduce appeal, restrict access, and denormalize use, including plain packaging, flavor bans, rotating health warnings, stronger regulation on digital marketing, and smoke-free, vape-free public spaces.
Yeah. Those things are very much important, but let me go back to an analysis that there seems to be a disconnect in terms of communicating the harms and toxicity of these products. And it seems like the youth do not appreciate it the way we want them to appreciate how harmful and toxic these products are. I think, how can we bridge that gap? What are the misconceptions or misunderstandings of our youth to these products? You, as a medical professional, I think this could be a platform to inform them on their misconceptions and misunderstanding on vape and e-cigarettes.
Great question. So first is the false sense of safety associated with flavors. Sweet or fruit flavor names lead youth to believe a product is less harmful. For example, one youth told us, the flavor coconut melon sounds so soft, it can't be that harmful, right? Youth also falsely believe vapes lack chemicals or contain natural ingredients. One could believe in our focus group believed a product was healthy because it was named ginger tea. The implication being that if it's named after something natural, the contents must be natural too. But we also heard statements like it doesn't have any chemicals mixing it. This is completely false. Research shows that e-cigarettes contain thousands of chemicals. Many are unknown and could include heavy metals. And we're still learning about the inhalation toxicity of many of these substances. There's also myth around secondhand vapor. Youth believes because the aerosol smells pleasant, it is more socially acceptable. And this leads some youth to wrongly assume it is not harmful to others. And this is concerning for two reasons. It makes them less cautious about exposing others, and it normalizes use in shared spaces because they genuinely believe they're not causing harm. The key point is youth are not choosing to ignore health risks. They've been deliberately misled by products designed to smell, taste, and sound safe, creating a sensory illusion that overrides their ability to accurately assess danger.
I see. You mentioned a while ago how else we can gatekeep or regulate access to these products. And I'm sure you studied our existing policies, and there's a problem on the existing policy, there's a problem on the implementation. Maybe what other loopholes can you present so that when we advocate with Congress, for example, or with the executive in terms of policies, these gaps will be solved, and hopefully we we reduce exposure and of course the prevalence on the use of these products.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So first we talked about the problem with age verification, right? So we need to first address age restrictions properly. Evidence shows that higher minimum sales or purchase age reduce youth access and initiation. But raising the age alone isn't enough. We also need robust enforcement. And second, and this is absolutely critical, we need to ban all flavors and reduce the appeal to youth. And this must be comprehensive across all nicotine and tobacco products. When you ban flavors in one product category but allow them in others, like heated tobacco products or nicotine pouches, youth will simply switch products. We saw this when the US banned certain flavored cigarettes. Then the flavored cigar sales spiked. So a comprehensive flavor ban across all product types prevents this type of product switching and removes the primary driver of youth experimentation and appeal. And third, advertising and marketing regulations must extend to digital spaces. Many existing policies were written before social media existed, so they regulate traditional advertising but leave massive gaps for influencer marketing, brand social media accounts, and online promotion. We need comprehensive regulations that explicitly include digital marketing, social media content, and influencer partnerships. And fourth, comprehensive smoke-free, vape-free policies. We need to make all public places 100% tobacco and nicotine-free. And this isn't just about protecting bystanders from secondhand exposure. It's also about denormalizing use and preventing the social modeling that drives youth initiation. So to summarize, comprehensive flavor bans across all tobacco and nicotine products, strong advertising and marketing regulations, including digital channels, raising age limits with robust enforcement, and 100% nicotine-free public spaces.
Yeah, these are all ideal policy suggestions, and we will surely bring them up to our policymakers. It's challenging, but for sure, these are going to be effective in terms of reducing prevalence of vape and e-cigarette use, and at the same time promoting public health. In a more practical or in a more even technical approach, what other ideas can we present to our policymakers at the national or the local government level? And of course, our parents and schools, maybe they can also do something so that these access and these promotions of the industry, all these nefarious activities that increase the prevalence of these products among our youth will be solved.
That's a great question. So policymakers need to enact the comprehensive policies that we just discussed. So complete flavor bans across all tobacco and nicotine products, comprehensive advertising and marketing regulations, including digital marketing, raising and enforcing age restrictions, and making all public places 100% tobacco and nicotine free. And government enforcement agencies need to implement what policymakers mandate. This means consistent, robust enforcement of the age verification. It means implementing the 100-meter no-sale zones around schools and monitoring compliance. It means enforcing graphic health warning label requirements and ensuring they're rotated regularly so they don't lose impact through desensitization. And in terms of schools play a different but equally important role. They need to educate students not just about health risks, but about industry tactics. Students need to understand that they're being manipulated by marketing designed specifically to hook them. This kind of media literacy and critical thinking is protective. Schools also need to connect students to cessation resources because some are already using and want to quit but don't know how. And then finally, there's parents who need to be better informed. They need to understand that these are drug delivery devices, not toys or safe alternatives to cigarettes. Some parents currently view vaping as a safer option and are not intervening or are even facilitating access. And that's very problematic. Parents need to have direct conversations with their children about nicotine addiction, recognize the devices and packaging so they know what to look for, understand that these products are specifically engineered to appeal to youth, and that no nicotine or tobacco products should be in the hands of children. So the key message here is that protection requires every layer working together: strong policy, real enforcement, educational intervention, and informed parents, because the industry is targeting youth from every angle, and our response needs to match that scope and intensity.
I like that part, the last part that you said regarding protection at every layer. I think I would repeatedly say that in my succeeding discussions in the podcast, in my advocacy. I personally am worried regarding the effects of these products to our youth. No, it's going to endanger our future. And maybe from a medical perspective, what future do you see if we don't do anything about this? If our governments, our whole of society would not advance the suggestions that you see and not try to solve this epidemic?
I hear you. And yes, every generation faces their unique public health challenges. If we think about early generations, it was cigarettes normalized through popular cultures like Hollywood and advertising and flavors. And now with e-cigarettes, it's a different device, but the same playbook. The question is whether we're going to let this pattern repeat itself or whether we're going to write a different page. But let me be clear, the negative future isn't inevitable, and here's why. Yes, if we do nothing, the risks are significant. If current trends continue, we face a future where a new generation is hooked early on nicotine. They may also be at higher risk of switching to combustible cigarettes. As a teenager put it, when they get to entice the teenager to vape, they may also be able to smoke because they already know how to sip. But here's what gives me hope. We have the evidence and the tools to prevent this future. We're not operating in the dark. We know what works. Globally, we see evidence that proven policies like comprehensive advertising and flavor bans effectively reduce consumption. These are not theoretical solutions. They're tested interventions that work when implemented comprehensively. And even more encouraging, we're seeing signs of youth-led resistance and awareness. There are already signs of youth recognizing these tactics and choosing health. Some participants in our focus groups shared consciousness of the risks. One person said, "I'm afraid the disease will get to me. While it's still early and I still have my breath, it's better to stop now." Many youth who don't use e-cigarettes are already resisting industry tactics because they value their health. They've witnessed the impact tobacco has had on their family, and they don't want to repeat the pattern. So I don't see a future defined by youth vaping. I see a future defined by healthy young people who have the information they need to make informed choices. And by revealing these tactics and pulling back the curtain on industry manipulation, we can ensure that every child understands they're being targeted. We can give them the tools to resist. So here's my final message. The future isn't predetermined. We have evidence-based solutions, we have growing youth awareness, and we have an opportunity to ensure this generation choose health over industry manipulation. That's a future I'm committed to building, and that's exactly what our research supports.
Wow, thank you very much, Dr. Tseng, on that very, very wonderful message regarding this advocacy. I personally would hold on to the hope that you shared with us. I agree with you regarding the youth participation from on the part of health justice and the civil society organizations here. We are seeing stronger support from the youth. They're owning this advocacy against vape and e-cigarettes, and we are excited to see them participate in this advocacy. And again, thank you very much for sharing this study with us. This is going to be useful, and we hope it's going to change our advocacy landscape here in the Philippines, a localized study on how our youth are perceiving or accessing these products. This is going to be helpful. Personally, thank you. And I hope that you can join us in other episodes of Health Justice Talks. This has been an enriching session to me, and I hope our listeners, our audience learned a lot from you too. And yes, I hope to see you and thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. And to our audience, again, thank you very much for listening. Sa muli, kami po'y magbabalik sa ibang episodes ng Health Justice Talks Season 2. Ito po ang Health Justice Talks, Usapang Kalusugan at Batas.